Hey, everyone. I'm Becca, he's Matt, and this is Becca's Book Club Adventure.
Hello. Okay. Part 2, House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas. Let's go.
Part 2 begins with Bryce landing in the Autumn King's study, where she's seemingly instantly disarmed and her magic restrained.
She proceeds to spend a few days in his villa, and the world is completely oblivious to her return. Bryce oscillates between trading information with him, such as where she was, what she learned, the current state of affairs with her friends, the star, sword, and dagger, why the king was such a shitty dad, and what he's studying. And then aimlessly wandering the villa.
Ethan, in the meantime, runs all the way back to Crescent City and makes a beeline for the House of Flame and Shadow itself, where he meets Jessica and demands the need for a necromancer to resurrect a lost Fendry heir.
Jessica, understandably curious about this demand, listens to his story about Sigrid and how Ethan needs to make it right. They strike a deal. If Ethan becomes the new Bryce, Jessica's assistant, she'll go ahead and put him in contact with the right necromancer, and Ethan agrees.
In the Eternal City, torture continues in an effort to break Hunt, Byaxian, and Rune, but none of them break.
Eventually, Hunt, Byaxian, and Rune are summoned for an audience with Rygelis. On the way there, the Hind leaps into action.
Dun, dun, dun. She shoots the guard in the elevator, leads Rune, Hunt, and Byaxian into a machine gun-topped jeep, and proceeds to lead an amazing race out of the city and into the countryside, with a little help from Flynn, Declan, and all the while Ithries, the fire sprite queen, blows up the spine of Pangea at the same time.
Racing through the countryside, the road abruptly ends because nobody knows where they're going, and it causes the group to change their plans. Lydia, who that was the Hind when she was bad, but now she's good, so we're going to call her Lydia, shifts into deer form and sprints away, knowing that Mordok and the Dreadwolves will follow her. Hunt and Byaxian grab Rune and fly away towards the awaiting depth charger and Therion.
When they land, Rune is distraught, and Therion shifts into mer form and swims away to help Lydia, who, by the way, leads the Dreadwolves on a merry chase that ends at a cliff. And rather than be captured and returned to the Asteri, she decides to jump to her death as the Death Wolves fire their guns at her.
Lydia died. D-I-E-D died. But Therion hauls her corpse onto the depth charger all the same, and the med witches get to work fixing her, restarting her heart, keeping her alive, blah, blah, blah.
While Lydia and Rune heal physically, Hunt and Byaxian try to heal mentally. Hunt also wants to spread the word about the Astari and has Therion try to set up a meeting with the Ocean Queen, who, coincidentally, already wants to see them.
Back at the House of Flame and Shadow, Ethan is busy cataloging all of Jessica's stuff. And he gets curious about it. And Parthos. And Jessica herself.
So we finally get some of her backstory. Jessica was a priestess of Parthos and escaped with some books 15,000 years ago. Apollyon intercepted the ship and cursed Jessica, giving her eternal youth and power. She's been honing and using those powers for 15,000 years to make the world safe again for her books.
Back at the Autumn King's villa, Bryce is finally able to gather enough information from her dear old dad that she no longer needs him. So she tricks him, restrains his magic, and imprisons him in his very own basement. She then takes some of his research, plays with his fancy science things, and then with the Star Sword and Dagger, teleports away.
And you would have thought this would have been the end of part 2, but it's not. This is only halfway through. Back on the depth charger, the story splits into 2 plot lines. Lydia wakes up upon learning where she is. She bolts from the medical room and goes in search of her twin sons, for whom she changed her life.
And Hunt, Byaxian, and Therion meet with the Ocean Queen. As the Ocean Queen, starts grilling them and letting her displeasure be known, Bryce walks in the door with all of her swagger and begins laying down truth bombs and trying to sway the Ocean Queen to her side against the Asteri.
Frustratingly, much like her father, the Ocean Queen is more interested in survival than outright victory. But she does agree to transport the group to Alabon, where Bryce believes she can find the missing pieces to her puzzle.
When they arrive there, Bryce uses the Star Sword to gain entry for herself, Hunt, Baxian, Rune, Flynn, Declan, and Lydia. Oh, and did we mention Therion, who goes with them against everybody's wishes? Okay, anyways, the Star Sword is the greatest Deus Ex Machina ever, and they get into Avalon.
Back in the House of Flame and Shadow, Ethan continues to work for Jessica until Hypaxia arrives, but she's no longer a queen.
Nope. You see, the Coven staged the coup that she always feared. Instead of doing anything about it, she fled and swore fealty to the House of Flame and Shadow. But that's okay, because now she's able to work with Ethan and Jessica to raise Sigrid from the dead.
Of which she had notably the shortest ceremony, which means she must have drained herself incredibly. But she still, for 7 hours, spends time successfully raising Sigrid under the Underking. But the Underking intercedes, and at the last moment, turns Sigrid into a Reaper.
Hypaxia muses that this might be corrected if only they had a Thunderbird to help. Good news. Sophie was a Thunderbird, and if they had her body, they could raise her from the dead and, correct this egregious error. Bad news, Sophie's body is currently in Avalon, being held by King Morven the Good.
Speaking of King Morven, the big group pays tribute, and Bryce tries to strike a deal. But the king is a bargaining chip they weren't expecting. Flynn's sister.
This was a little bit painful, so cutting through all of the Avalon phase chauvinistic bullshit, Bryce does indeed strike her deal. Here, it goes a little something like this. In exchange for the group having access to the archives and the Cave of Princes, Therion marries Sathia, that's Flynn's sister in case you didn't know. Bryce will give Morven the Autumn King's notes, and everybody gets to stay alive.
And with that, the group splits into two. Bryce, Hunt, Byaxin, Therion, and Sathia head to the Cave of Princes, while Rune, Flynn, Declan, and Lydia hit the archives.
While they do that, we can take a moment and go back to the House of Flame and Shadow for all of the action-packed updates. You ready for this? Jessica begins planning for them to travel to Avalon.
But they are rudely interrupted by the Imperial Omega boats sailing into the Istros and launching brimstone missiles into the human-occupied quarter of Asphodel Meadows, essentially incinerating every human in the area. For 2 days, they helped the humans.
And you would think that part 2 ended here as well, but no, it didn't. Because for those same 2 days, Team Cave follows carvings on the wall similar to the ones in the Prythian tunnel that was all of part 1, but they don't really have any discernible story.
The search for information isn't very successful for Team Archives, to the point that Flynn and Declan decide to knock off early and seem to be content to let Rune and Lydia take over the search on their own.
Without them, conveniently enough, Rune and Lydia suddenly have some alone time to figure out their relationship.
Just about the time that Rune starts wondering what happened to his best friends, he and Lydia head to the Cave of Princes in search of them. King Morven and the Autumn King step out of the shadows and confront Team Cave, along with the murdered twins Flynn and Declan as captives, meant to be bargaining chips.
Bryce's swagger and her laser starlight cause a cave-in and allow Team Cave to jump into the river and swim away downstream to a riverbank where they are able to find a gateway in the rock wall that leads them into a room that houses Peleus's sarcophagus, which Bryce pushes away to reveal a hidden staircase that leads them to a hidden room where Bryce and Hunt mind travel. Holy run-on sentence, Batman.
Woo! Their bodies remain in the cave, but their minds, and maybe their souls, travel to Hell, where Adius leads them into a conference with Apollyon and Thanatos. And the powwow is super interesting and full of exposition, so here's what you need to know.
Okay, firstly, the sword and the dagger can indeed be paired together to open a portal to a place of nothing, ostensibly so that everybody can shove the Asteri in there.
Second, Thea split her power into thirds, and Bryce has 2/3 of that power currently, and needs to find the last third in order to make the sword and dagger work.
Third, Hunt was apparently bred by Apollyon and Thanatos, but only after their creation of the Thunderbirds failed because the Asteri hunted them to extinction. They bred Hunt as a way to ensure that Bryce had a power-up source if should she fail to reunite all 3 parts of Thea's power.
And lastly, Bryce needs to open the portals in the Northern Rift for Apollyon, Idias, and Thanatos to bring their armies to Midgard and battle the Asteri once more.
When the powwow ends, Bryce and Hunt awaken in the Cave of Princes. But they're not alone.
Their friends are still there, but trapped in a ring of fire because the Autumn King and King Morrivan and the Murder Twins are there as well. And Bryce is having none of it.
In perhaps one of the coolest battle scenes I think I've read, Bryce launches herself against the kings while Hunt takes on the Murder Twins.
Lightning meets shadows, Starfire meets shadows and flames, and Bryce teleports from place to place and ends up incinerating the twins from inside out.
Just as the Autumn King and King Morven seem to be getting the better of Bryce because 2 against 1, Rune comes out of nowhere and stabs his father through the heart, and then Bryce ends King Morven.
In the aftermath, all of her companions declare her Queen of the Valembran and Alavan Fae.
Part 2 comes to a close as Bryce literally puts the final pieces of the puzzle together and unleashes the 3rd piece of Thea's power, taking it into herself and allowing it to revitalize the land and surrounding islands of Avalon back into lush, thriving beauty.
With that, Part 2 ends. But of course, it can't end on a high note. Nope. The group received word that the Asteri made their move, and that it was more than just the Acidalt Meadows bombing. They took out every single Ophion base on the continent and wiped out every person there.